Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for another episode of ADHD for Smartass Women. You know that my purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. And in the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something. Not one. So, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Sarah McGlory. Sarah is a digital entrepreneur who works from home while caring for 5 kids aged 3 to 13. Those are the kids that are at home. And then there's a 24-year-old who has left the nest. She always felt like a failure because her home was always a disaster. At a certain point, she realized that comparing herself to the cleaning gurus that she saw on social media, it just wasn't working. After all, they had endless energy and perfect homes, and Sarah had chronic pain and mismatched furniture. So instead, Sarah decided to adapt to her time and energy needs rather than attempting to force herself to follow unrealistic expectations. So she set out to create a system that today she calls adaptive cleaning that would allow her to stay organized without spending hours doing so. Now Sarah has almost 1 million followers on TikTok who she teaches how to do the same. And I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but I believe that a listener reached out to us and said, you need to get Sarah on the podcast, which is how you ended up here. I think that's the story.
Really?
Yeah. So
That's
welcome. Did I
cool.
get all of
Thank
that right?
you. Yes, thank you so much.
Wonderful. It's lovely to have you here, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about so many subjects, but especially adaptive cleaning. But first, I want to talk about your transformation, your social media glow up, your adaptive cleaning program. But I'd love for our audience to get to know you first. So if it's okay, could we talk about your ADHD diagnoses?
Yes, of course. I'm 45 now. When I was about 21, I was pretty convinced that I had ADHD. I had a baby, and you know how if you have ADHD and then you have a child and you're not getting sleep, every single one of your symptoms just gets dramatically pronounced. So I figured that that was what was going on, but I was really insecure about it. People in my generation, I don't feel like really had access to much mental health support anyway, but definitely not an ADHD. Like that was really a made up diagnosis
Yeah.
that was the rhetoric I heard growing up. And so I got up the courage, I saved the money, I went to try to take the test to see if I had ADHD. And it was a male doctor, and he told me, what are you here for? And I told him, and he said, well, what's going on before we even start this list of questions? And I said, well, you know, all the things. And he said, I think you really could lose weight, and I think you're depressed.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay. A doctor told me. So I was
Thanks for
like, okay.
nothing.
I feel even worse now. So I left. And then it took me until, 2 decades later to go back. I already had a psychiatrist. In about 2021 is when I broached the conversation with my psychiatrist because we had gone from having 3 kids at home to adopting. We were in the adoption process with 3 other children. So, and then it's the pandemic, and I'm supposed to homeschool, 2 of the kids. And I was just losing my mind. And I was thinking, I don't think other people have this hard of a time. And I'm going to actually advocate for myself. So I did end up going to my psychiatrist. She did the test. She was like, yes,
Mm.
you have inattentive ADHD in a big way. So it's like, thank you for confirming that. I did go on medication as well, but the confirmation was huge for me.
That is unbelievable. Well, first of all, I have to say, if you have three kids at home and you're in the adoption process working on three more, I think that
Hmm.
would give anyone like fright and overwhelm and all of the things. But I
Hmm.
can only imagine you have that and the ADHD brain on top of it, right?
Yeah, well, one of the children too, we actually brought her home from the hospital when she was 2 days old. So then it's like I'm no longer in my 20s or 30s sleep deprived. I am 42
Uh-huh.
and sleep deprived, and it was just it was every single thing. And then my husband worked a lot, so it was every single thing that I think kind of puts an ADHD brain off balance.
And then
and
COVID, right?
and COVID, and we had no help because we couldn't see anybody.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And what we know is that you chintz on your sleep and all mental health issues get worse.
Oh, for
So,
sure. And I've never slept well to begin with. I've had
yeah.
insomnia since I was a kid. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I want to know, what was Sarah like as a child?
I was thinking about this because there are so many things you think about, but I was thinking about in relation to ADHD. And I think that the biggest defining aspect of that in my life as a child and a teenager was that I just felt very out of step in my peer group. I did not really understand how to be social, like all of the skills that people understood. I felt very awkward at. I felt like I processed things slower. I got the jokes slower, everything. And I was always kind of just in my mind. I had a lot of, you know, anxiety and other things, but I could not really bridge that gap. I was not I was not like other kids. I could tell it, they could tell it. I was nice and everything, but it just I struggled. Very, very difficult time with social stuff.
Did you think you weren't smart, or were you actually really good at the school stuff? It was just the social stuff that was more of a struggle.
I was extremely smart, but I didn't think that I was because I couldn't seem to get on the same page. And it took me a long time to understand things that I didn't care about.
Hmm.
And so you start to think, well, I'm smart in certain areas. For instance, I was reading like classic books by the time I was like 8 years old. I could read and get lost forever. But if it was something that I didn't care about, looking back, I realized I just didn't care about it. But if it was, one of those topics, I just couldn't, nothing that I did could make me understand and comprehend it.
Yeah.
So I did feel very stupid. And I thought that, potentially the social stuff was like a slowness of my mind. And it
Hmm.
was just, a difference in my mind. So
Did you have a best friend?
I did not have a best friend until I was 11 years old. I was in ballet from the time I was 5, and we moved to a different studio when I was 11. And I honestly think I met Noelle, and I'm still friends with her to this day, when we were both 11. And I think she saved me in many ways because she was a person who could perfectly interact with anyone. And she knew all of the, just the little things that you can say to make a conversation easier. She knew how to fill a silence. She knew how to do all of those things. And she loved me. I did not know why. It had never happened before that someone who was, so adept at socializing really took a shine to me, but she did, and I loved her. She loved me. We've been friends since. So yeah.
That is so lovely. You said something about ballet. So you started
Hmm.
dancing at 5. And I'm curious
Hmm.
because I danced ballet from the time I was 7 for about 10
Oh, okay.
years.
Cool.
And I am convinced that it saved me
Yeah.
because, of the kind of exercise it is. You've got the isometric, you've also, I mean, the aerobic, you've also got the, that you're they're steps that you have to learn. So you've got your body, your brain, your heart kind of all working at the same time. And I'm
Right?
curious what you think about that. I think it changed my brain.
I think that it was a absolute salvation for me as well. I had a lot of trauma also as a child and then even later as a teenager. But so I think with ADHD, but also with trauma, and there's a lot of overlap there. I did not know how to feel in my body at all. I did not understand emotions. Emotions were very scary for me. I lived in my head. I was constantly trying to portray who I thought people wanted me to be. And then when I got to ballet, especially the longer that I was in it and the more I advanced, I just felt free. It was the only time I felt free. My body understood what it felt when I was dancing, and I just felt like I had a voice, which is interesting because I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah. Well, you felt safe.
I felt so safe. I felt so, it just, everything made sense. It's the only thing ever that has made me feel quite that way. I think that certain exercise does, and just having fun dancing around does, like Zumba or whatever, but it's not quite like ballet.
So, when did you stop dancing ballet?
When I was 16.
And so, have you always felt like, because I stopped around that time frame too. And of course, that kind of coincides with puberty. And I mean, it's a little bit late for puberty, but all of those changes in your body, hormones, etc. And I can almost remember, like, my ballet days, I was a different person than my after ballet days. But now that I know how important exercise is to the ADHD brain, and especially that level, because I was dancing 6 days a week, now it
Same.
makes sense to me. But I didn't know then. And I'm curious if you kind of had that same, delineator and trying to figure out, well, why did I feel so different?
It really never occurred to me until much, much later. That was not something that kind of clicked into place for me until, I mean, honestly, maybe the last 6 years.
Yeah. No, and I
So,
get that because that is my experience too. So I just wrote it off to, oh, it's puberty, it's teenageness, it's growing up, it's all of that. I never attributed it to ADHD and dopamine and all of that stuff.
I just thought it's trauma.
Oh, okay, yours was its trauma.
I thought, it never occurred to me to think that there was something more, to put a finer point on it. I thought it was the way I reacted to trauma. I never thought that there was something not in my control that was the issue. I thought I had control over everything.
Especially
So,
in your head, right? You think
for
that
sure.
that's where we have the control is in our head.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, what happened after high school? So, did you graduate with pretty good grades, or
Yeah.
did school start to be a struggle? Not at all. School was good.
I mean, it was a struggle with math. I have one of my ADHD characteristics is that I cannot conceptualize things in my brain. So, like geometry, for instance, for me was a black abysmal hole. But I did well because I figured out pretty early on that I wasn't going to study. I was not going to do homework. So if I paid really good attention in class, if I took excellent notes, because that kind of engaged me, if I asked a lot of questions, that I would absorb enough and I'd just try to do my homework at school. And that got me through. So
So, you must be traditionally pretty smart.
I think that I am smart enough to get by.
Yeah. Okay. To get the grades,
Yeah.
that you would want.
They weren't perfect, but they were, I got pretty good grades.
Yeah. So, what happened after that?
I wanted to go to college, didn't really have the money for it. It was one of those things where I was going to need to come up with the money for that. So I started working at a restaurant. Then I got pregnant. Then I, got married. And then that was kind of my life kind of veered that way. I did end up going, I took like 5,000 classes at community college and at U of H when my first child was younger, but I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to take classes I liked, and I just couldn't, buckle down. So I never ended up getting my degree at that time. I went back as I think I was like 39 or 38 when I went back to school, and I got my degree, but I just got it because I was tired of not following through. So I did it.
In what?
Don't use it. I got a bachelor's of science and a minor in counseling.
Wow, but you kind of do sort of use it, don't you think? In what you do
I do
today?
use I mean, I use like counseling, psychology, everything that I do for myself,
Hmm.
for my kids, and then I think that just naturally comes out with my content for sure. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to know if you would just kind of walk us through, like, how did adaptive cleaning, your TikTok, all your social media stuff, how did that come about? How did it happen?
So back in, I guess it was 2019 or so, I started a YouTube channel because that was kind of the point where I decided that I was tired of having really negative self-talk and, constantly telling myself I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. And something I'd always wanted was to create video content.
Ah,
It, Thinking about it from an ADHD lens, I've actually realized it makes a lot of sense because my life makes sense when I can see it visually outside of myself,
mhm.
So I really liked making vlogs and things because I don't know, it just made sense to me in a way that living my life didn't make sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, so I started with a YouTube channel. I had, I mean, like 125 subscribers. And then when we brought our baby home in 2021, I thought, well, I still really want to make content. It's not going to be long form content because I am currently drowning, but I still need to make sacred space for myself to do something that I actually like. So my older daughter she didn't make content on TikTok, but she was like, check it out. So I looked at it. I was like, okay, this is fun. And I started to make content about cleaning because that was all I had time to do. I There was literally nothing else that I could do. I didn't really want to make like, here are all my kids' content. So I did cleaning content. I knew that I wanted to be very transparent because I'd been pretty harmed by like perfectionist social media. So, and it just took off. I worked through like in real time on my TikTok channel, I was working through how to kind of face this very different time and energy that I was dealing with. And so it just kind of developed that way. I started to make plans for myself where well, if I have the lowest capacity, what can I do? And then I kind of do that. And then if I have a little bit more capacity, I'll do this, but I had to have it written down. Otherwise, I'd try to overdo it if I had the slightest bit of time and energy. And then eventually I developed high capacity lists for myself. And then I just kind of shared it as I went along and people were into it. I think it makes a lot more sense than a lot of the ways we're taught to clean traditionally, which is, you know, you keep your house perfect at all times. You just get it done. It doesn't matter if you don't feel like it, doesn't matter if you don't have the energy, you just do it. That was kind of the way that I was taught. And I think that was definitely the way social media portrayed it. Like,
Mhm.
you can go and clean your entire house in a weekend. look at me do it. And those videos went crazy because people wanted to believe that was possible. And it's not possible for almost anyone.
And
So
I don't care who it is. I'm sorry. Their home is not always perfect.
there are some, but you know what? They have help. They
Okay,
have
they have
help.
help, or we start
Or,
dealing with mental health issues, right?
well, yes, because actually it's funny that I've had a ton of people reach out to me who have OCD who clean too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the same mental block. Like you cannot, it has to be perfect, but they just deal with it on the extreme side.
Right. It's how they deal with their anxiety. And I'm a
Yes.
little bit like that. Granted, I might throw it behind a cabinet so you don't see it.
Right?
But if there's visual clutter, I just can't even move forward. Okay, so
True.
this is the perfect time to talk about. Wait, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, did you decide to do TikTok and cleaning because you thought, okay, well, this will give me guardrails, and not only will I be helping other people, but I'll be helping myself. And so if there's anybody that's following me that's getting something out of it, maybe that will motivate me to do more in the house and learn how to do it for myself? Or no?
Um, Not the second part, but the first part. So there was a little bit of it in there, like if I have to do this task that I hate, maybe I'll film it and maybe it'll help other people and it will kind of normalize a normal home.
Hmm.
I had spent probably 2 years on YouTube at that point, getting I mean, it was very minimal interaction. So I really didn't have any expectation that I was going to do well.
Uh-huh.
So I just thought, well, it's for me. I like making content. I really like editing. I think that that's a very creative, fun process.
Oh my.
And so, later then I was like, okay, well, now people are paying attention, but I still tried really hard not to do the thing which I think a lot of cleaning influencers do, which is they're like, I will get more views, I will make more money if I am constantly cleaning and constantly portraying this idea that it's always on track. And so that was just not something I wanted to do. If I didn't feel it, I wasn't going to do it. If my home was trashed and I wanted to make a video, I'd make a video without staging it. So I think it was pretty organic until I realized, oh, I think I'm onto something. I think that people are getting something out of this.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you've struggled with chronic pain,
Hmm.
and we know that women with ADHD are more likely to struggle with chronic illness, especially the
Hmm.
discrete inflammatory and autoimmune illnesses. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you wove this novel adaptive cleaning where
Hmm.
it's levels based on how you're feeling? So,
Hmm.
how did all that come about? And can you just talk about this a little bit?
Sure. It was just, I had really internalized, like I said earlier, this idea that cleaning is a chunk that you do. You do it all. Maybe it's just one room, maybe it's not the entire house, but you clean the whole thing.
Hmm.
And you have to get kind of to a level playing field before you can keep routines. That was kind of the idea. Like until you're at a clean slate, you're not going to have routines. So I was constantly striving for that. What ended up happening is I would have pain. I would have executive dysfunction, even though at that, for such a long time, I didn't attribute it to that. I attributed it to laziness and lack of motivation. But I would just do nothing. I would do nothing and do not. I mean, I was doing the things that had to get done. I was just, I would get stuck. I would get totally frozen and things would build up and build up and build up. And then I would think, okay, I'd turn on the YouTube video of like the extreme clean all day with me, and I would just hit it. I would go so hard and I'd clean everything. And then I would get sick every time. because the way my autoimmune disease is, if I'm too tired, I'm getting sick. And I would wear myself out, and then I'm sick, and then it takes me a week or two to recover from that. And then I start the whole process again. So whenever I was thinking, like, I now have 6 children. I cannot keep repeating the same process over and over. I have to figure something different out. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to write a list, and it's going to be only what I can complete in a given day. I'm not going to write myself a list for my ideal self. I'm going to write a list for what can be done. And when I first started it, it was like, change your clothes, brush your teeth, do the dishes, and then that would be it. And then something happened in my brain when I was able to click off all of the things that I had done. I was like, okay, I actually feel, I know that that's not a lot of stuff to do, but I feel accomplished. And then I realized the correlation that when I'm trying to make myself do more than I mentally or physically can do, I am setting myself up for failure. Whereas if I will tone it way down and make it super simple, then I will do something, even when I'm very tired or even when I'm, feeling inflamed or whatever the case may be, because it was accessible to me. So then I started to call it my low capacity list. And if you do things, even if they're small things, consistently, you will see a change in your home, which is what happened to me, even with all of this chaos around all the time. And I just started to see a difference, and I started to view myself differently, because now I'm seeing myself not look at a list of things and not do them. I'm looking at a small list of things and I'm doing all of them. So then I start to view myself as someone who can clean a little. And that's how it kind of came to be, because I thought, well, people have, whether you have autoimmune disease or not, people have certain times when their capacity and their mind is not going to want to do all of these different things. But if you let it keep piling up, it's always going to be a disaster. So and then there are people who are incredibly busy. I was thinking about like single parents doing all of these things to just make ends meet and make all the decisions and everything. And then they're, coming home with no mental or physical energy. And then they're looking at this space. So I just thought a lot about people who were not experiencing regular times of energy and ability to do stuff around their house. That was my woman or my man. They're, whoever wanted to use it. So that's who I made that for. That's kind of how that came to be. And it just made so much sense to me. If you see yourself completing things, you no longer see yourself as a failure in that department. You might not brag to everybody like, hey, my house is perfect, but you're like, I'm doing stuff. I'm doing stuff consistently.
Do you think in doing this, you have in essence changed your brain because you've taught yourself, when I do these things and I'm reliable to me, I feel better. So you can almost put yourself in the future while you're struggling with, crap, do I even want to get off the couch and do this? No.
Right, 100%. It was a very big breakthrough for me. That's a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from people is like, this changed my home, but then this changed how I thought about things. And then it goes beyond cleaning, which was always my goal. Once I realized that it really changed how I viewed myself as a whole, also, like, oh, well, I'm just putting too much on my plate, not just with cleaning, with other things. I'm just expecting my ideal self to show up every day. That's not fair. And so then I began to just view it, I think about it with regards to fitness, with regards to making meals, to everything. I'm like, well, why am I going to have an expectation of myself that I make a from scratch meal when I feel like I am going to fall on the floor? Why would I do that to myself? Why would I not have options for really quick things that I could make? Why would I not ahead of time create some options for myself if I'm at low capacity? So just everything. And then you just start to see how much pressure you've put on yourself in every area of your life. So I think definitely the way I would never have pursued having a platform. I would never have, sat down to create these cleaning lists for other people or anything. I was so scared of I'm so scared of everything I do. But I now have a working memory that if I break it down and if I allow myself to not be on or, at 100% all the time, if I just am practical, that I can do anything so far.
And can I ask you, do you think that this strategy that you've employed, obviously it works for the ADHD brain, but do you think it also works for trauma when we get stuck?
I do, because there's a lot of overlap with those things. Something kind of interesting, every time I've talked about cleaning trauma because I work on all the platforms. I have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, because people are on different stuff. And I will talk about cleaning trauma in particular. That's not trauma, but it's cleaning trauma. And it is wild, the reaction that will come about, because there's first the people who are like, there's no cleaning trauma.
Okay, wait, tell us what that is. What is that?
It's a lot of things. So for instance, if you're a little child with ADHD and you're told to go into your room, which is a disaster, and you're told to clean it up and not come out until you're done, that's not my nails are being pulled out trauma, but that is, I don't have any tools and I'm expected to figure it out without any tools. And that's scary and that's overwhelming. And then that now makes me see myself as an incompetent person in regards to this one area. And when you're a child, you're the center of your entire universe. You don't have any perspective of like, well, maybe my parents, they're exhausted from work and they can't come help me, or, they don't know what they're doing, so how are they going to come help me? You have none of that. So you're just like, I am a failure. I cannot figure this out to save my life. So that's like a small thing. Then there are people who are, I've heard a million stories, because every time I talk about it, people are messaging me. They're like, this happened to me. Thank you for validating it. And their stories are, I wasn't allowed out of my room for 3 days and all they gave me was water.
Oh, wow.
Stuff like that. So then people online will be like, cleaning trauma is not a thing. And it is. I think that very much when you're not given tools as a child, or, maybe your parents had ADHD and they didn't know how to do anything, and you were living in like hoarder-like circumstances, you're going to grow up and that's going to feel traumatic. Nobody tried to hurt you. You were still in a safe, loving environment, but it was a trauma to you in a certain way. So there's that aspect of it. There's like the cleaning trauma aspect of it that I definitely think really helps people, because it takes the pressure off of you, because your internal story has been that you're a failure, that you cannot figure this out. You're too lazy, or you're just disgusting. You just can't do it. Everybody else can, just not you. That's your dialogue typically. And then it kind of removes that pressure. Like, no, Like let's normalize the fact that many people are working their hardest and they're very smart and very motivated and their homes are still really messy. But also just do what you can. That's such a foreign concept, I think, especially to women, because the perfectionism that kind of we feel we have to produce at all times is a burden that is enough to keep you from moving in many occasions.
And also the fact that women are the ones that are tasked with all this, right?
Hmm.
We're the project managers of our home, whether or not we are good at this stuff or not. Because
Right.
I don't know many men who are stressed out about this. I really don't. And if it's really bad, they'll be like, oh, let's hire someone, or let's have mom come do it, right?
Well, they say, I had asked my husband this one time because I was just thinking about it and I was like, whenever you look at our house and it looks like this, and it was just, real bad, I was like, how does it make you feel about yourself? And he just looked at me and he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, how do you feel it reflects on you? And he's like, I mean, I don't. We've been busy. We have kids. We're not getting enough sleep. Our house, I mean, it makes sense. It's like,
And bravo to you for picking the right guy.
oh, for sure. And then I just thought, well, so what we're doing is, or I'm not going to speak for all women, but a lot of women, especially a lot of women that I speak to, what they're doing is it's the pressure, it's this reflects on me. And in reality, it's not an emotional problem. It's a practical problem. Mess and cleaning is a practical issue, has to get done to a greater or lesser extent in order for you to live and have clean clothes and, eat off of dishes and that kind of thing. It's just, and that's how it is for my husband. And I think it is for many men. It's just a practical thing. You have the time or you don't. And there is freedom in that.
You have, I think I saw it on TikTok and on Instagram, and it's actually your husband cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And you are talking about this idea that, well, I think the idea behind it was that, okay, women are supposed to be good at these things. But the truth of the matter is, some of us aren't, and some of us are. Whatever, right?
Yeah,
And it's the shame around it.
it's the
But
shame.
again, I think it's women that tend to put that on ourselves. Sometimes, of course, we're in partnerships where our partner will be like, well, that's your job. I mean, I have many friends who, the husband would literally work until 10:30 in the morning and go play golf. And the wife, who had 2 kids, was responsible for everything else.
Oh, for
And
sure.
if she didn't do those things, then she was, a bad mother, a bad wife, a bad person,
Yes.
which is abusive and trauma.
It's very, and it sucks too, because I think that if you switch roles, like thankfully, I think now a lot more men are staying home and having that experience of taking care of a child, and how absolutely endless it is, how absolutely banging your head against the wall it is, because you're simply trying to teach a tiny human who has no emotional control whatsoever how to have emotional control and how to interact with others and how to pick up and how not, just all of these things that men who have never stayed home with a child do not understand. And they don't understand, well, outside of that, they're creating a mess. You're living your life, you're at home, you're living life, you're doing things together. Messes are happening. It just never stops. The jobs that you have never stop. And I think that if men ever had to be in a position where they were expected to take care of the child, and I'm not talking like lay on the couch while the child destroys the house, which is a form of gross manipulation that men do to women, I think. I think that they would just value that job in such a different way. It is an enormous job. It is whether you work outside of the home or you don't work outside of the home, taking care of children, taking care of a home is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important work.
It is. But it's
Um,
excruciating day in, day out
Groundhog
monotony.
Day. It ends and
Yeah.
then it starts again. And I think that's why a lot of women with ADHD struggle in that role because it's boring.
It's
Nothing. I mean, it's
so
just kind of,
boring.
which is why a lot of us end up like you, like me, starting something in the home, right?
Yeah.
Something entrepreneurial. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, have you gotten to the point where, you know how with ADHD, we can be the kind of people, not all of us, but many of us, where we pull stuff out and we don't put it back. We open up drawers, the drawer is open, we don't. So then you look around and there's crap everywhere. And what I've realized is if I would just take that next step and just put it back, it wouldn't all be piling up. And so, as I said, I call it visual pollution. I can't work in that. So what I do is procrastinate, and I'll go around and I'll close all the things and I'll put everything away because I just can't. Is that something you can actually train yourself to do? Have you been successful at it, or is it just not how our brains work?
I can't answer that question outside of my circumstances. I've never been in a situation with the current tools that I have where I don't have a lot of children and a lot of, my bandwidth is just taken up. But I kind of have a hunch that I am not that person. And I definitely am not that person when I have so many other obligations. So I I think that's like one of the great things that I've learned how to do is I am not going to work against my brain. I'm going to work with my brain. If my brain, puts things down all the time and then I try to clean and I can't because I have the visual pollution, it's just everywhere. And I feel overwhelmed and I feel sweaty, then have you ever watched Friends with Monica's closet, her one closet that was completely trashed?
Wait, Monica? Isn't Monica the one that's all organized?
Yes, but she has one closet and it is trashed. There's so much stuff in there. Okay, so ADHD people have the doom piles, they have all of this, they have their Monica closets. So what I decided was I was going to have baskets where I would just, if I couldn't see an immediate home for stuff or it didn't belong in that room, I just throw everything in the basket. I have very intentional doom piles because I don't think you can clean and organize at the same time. I can't. I think a lot of people can't. So that's one of those things where I'm like, well, my brain doesn't want, if I'm finally going to clean and if I see all this stuff, my brain gets overwhelmed and then it's like, okay, go sit back down. I'm just going to do something about it. Just throw it in a basket. And then of course the baskets can sit forever. So I also have that I have it on my weekly calendar. On Fridays, I work on piles, but I also have it on my monthly cleaning thing. I have one day a month that I work on piles. That could be mail or whatever. But I just think, why do you expect yourself to put everything back? Maybe the homes that you have for things make sense traditionally, but they don't make sense functionally. I think that's something that people, when I put out content about it, they really respond to because they're like, that's true. I think that something has to go in the bathroom, but I'm never using it in the bathroom. And so I'm now wondering why it's never put away. It's because you're using it, make a home for it where you actually use it. Even if it's, not an aesthetic home or it's not a traditional home, just work with your brain.
Totally.
I think there are so many little things that we can do because we're actually quite creative. Where if we allow ourselves to not do things the way we've been told to do them, then I think you kind of get into some, I don't want to say genius, but
I
Maybe
like
some
that.
genius ideas.
Well, I love your basket idea because I always work from a position of positive emotion. If I'm in
Hmm.
negative emotion, I am not going to get out of my own way. But if I
Hmm.
see clutter all over and I really don't have time to deal with the clutter, but I've got to get this work done, and I happen to be, which I'm always kind of in an open space because I don't like
Hmm.
being by myself in an office,
Yeah.
I could take that basket and just throw everything in there.
Hmm.
And then you ratchet up, you've got a little bit more positive emotion that then allows you to do, the next
Sure.
thing and the thing after that. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
I
then
like
once
that.
it's in a basket, you go, it's all collected. So then you can just go room to room and put stuff up or have your kids come get it.
Yes, exactly. So I'm curious, has your chronic pain gotten any better since you started implementing adaptive cleaning and since you've created these platforms to talk about what you struggle with, but also show what you've mastered?
Yes. Maybe not for the reason that you think. Um, Maybe it is. Maybe this is what you're saying. But since I have started living my life this way in a way where I'm not pressuring myself, I'm not guilting myself,
Mhm.
I am validating that it's okay that I'm not on all the time. So, how that has transformed me as far as my disease processes is I get a lot more rest
Ah.
and I was always resting. This is the interesting thing. I was always physically resting, but I would lay there and just my mind was just beating myself up. I'm thinking about all the things that I could be doing, all the obligations that I'm shirking right now so I can lay down. And why do I feel so exhausted? What is wrong with me? Then when I just looked at myself like, we're not going to be emotional, we're going to be practical. And practically speaking, why do I have to have 100% energy all the time?
Mhm.
Why do I think I don't deserve rest? Why do I not think that that's a very important part of my life? And I realized if I lay down to rest and I'm not guilting myself, I'm not feeling shame about all this stuff that's undone, then I'm actually resting. Because you can lay down all you want, you can sleep all you want, but if you're mad at yourself the whole time, no rest is happening. You are not restoring yourself in any way. So that I think has given me like license to rest, but also peace while I'm resting. And then that, of course, does help you. It helps you physically.
Yeah, well, it reduces your stress levels, right?
Hmm. Yes.
It allows you to really practice self care instead of
Hmm.
thinking you are and really you're beating yourself up the whole time. You might as well get
Hmm.
up, right?
Right.
Feel better.
But you can't.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so I am curious about, I know that you've developed products, or maybe what
Hmm.
I should ask you is, if people are interested in what you're doing, is
Hmm.
there something that you're working on that you want to tell us about?
I'm currently working on a physical planner, which is something people have asked for a really long time.
Mhm.
But I have a lot of resources for people they can come to my website and just check it out. I have things that are free, like I have a weekly cleaning plan that you can just download. And then it shows you kind of how I break things down, gives you some options. And then I have things that are paid for. I have the adaptive cleaning system, which is all of the deep cleaning and maintenance tasks. They're all broken down into three options so that you can have a low capacity thing to do, something if you're at average capacity, and something if you're at high capacity. So I have that for everything. You can choose, when and how you want to do that. And then I also have a home reset, which I put out because even when you are doing things on a consistent basis, there are going to be times when, maybe you got sick, then the kids got sick, or you have these work deadlines and you're not really doing much of anything except for the priorities. Things get overwhelming in your home. Or if you've never done adaptive cleaning and your spaces are seriously you know, overwhelming. There's piles and things everywhere. You don't know where to start. That's really what I made the home reset for. It's a 30-day thing where there are just different tasks that you can do. It starts off slow, and then I have like affirmations in there because one of the things, I've noticed is that a lot of people have very negative self-talk that I interact with. And whenever I was going through therapy and stuff, my therapist was like, you just need to talk to yourself in a positive way and da da da. And I was like, but it's lies. Like, how can you sit there and be like, I'm actually, great at cleaning and I'm about to conquer my house. That's not true. So I wanted to make sure that I had like neutral affirmations in there, and positive affirmations if you're ready for that. But I just did a lot of little things that have helped me when I was trying to come out of that, the mountain that I was buried under before I had systems that worked for me. So that's what the home reset is for. I also have one for like teens or young adults. It's like a pared down version of my adaptive cleaning system for if they have like a bedroom and a bathroom to take care of. It breaks it down for them at capacity, because I think a lot of times people don't register that they're teenagers or the young adults in their life. They can't, you've said, go clean your room and your bathroom. It needs to be spotless. Why do you assume they can do that? Why do you assume they have the capacity or the bandwidth to do that at this time? So I did one because I had kind of a lot of younger people reach out and be like, could you do one for like a smaller space? So yeah, those are some things that I'm offering right now.
I love that, because then as the parent, you don't have to tell them how to do it, which is probably makes it easier, right? That they actually have a list. They just go do it. Mom's not bossing them around.
Right. It gives some autonomy.
Where do we go to find this?
Oh, my website is just my name. It's Sarah McGlory, SarahMcGlory.com. And then I have, all my stuff there.
Where are you on TikTok? What is your handle there?
Sarah McGlory.
Same.
It's either Sarah McGlory. The only two that are not my name are on Facebook and YouTube, and those are Sarah McGlory Home.
Okay. Yeah. It's Sarah McGlory for TikTok. Yeah. So I am curious, are you just incredulous that you talk and teach about cleaning?
Yeah, because I hate it.
You were?
I hate it. And I have a literal platform built on it, which is so funny. But
Do you still hate it, or are you starting to learn to actually like it? Is it therapeutic at all for you?
No. I will never like it. It is boring to me. I have figured out hacks to make it less boring for myself, but I would rather be doing anything else. I don't think it's there. I love it when it's done. Yeah. So there is that, but like getting there feels like a pretty long slog.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, yeah, you're honest. It never gets better.
Well, it does for some people, but I am someone who I really cannot force myself to like anything that is not lighting up certain pleasure centers in my brain, and cleaning's not one of,
And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If that's the thing that excites you.
And it can, great if it does. Like, I understand that there are people who feel like, my oldest daughter's stepmom, she enjoys the process of setting things to rights. She likes that. And I think that's great, but I don't. And I also have a heck of a lot more to set to rights than a lot of people. So,
Well, and it's not just you and your partner. It's all these kids. I remember that driving me nuts. And I only had two, where you clean everything up and then you turn around and there were these dirty it would make me nuts.
I know. very specifically undo what you've just done. Like they just know.
Yeah. So maybe we just need to kind of just really lighten up, right? Until the kids are out of the house.
Yeah, I mean, some things just have to get done and it's fine. We'll just, make the best of it.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think it's good to always be curious about how to make it easier for yourself.
Yeah.
Because I definitely will put on a comfort show a lot of the time when I'm cleaning. I'll put on my headphones, kind of gets me in the zone, kind of trick myself into I'm doing something slightly enjoyable, watching The Office, and I'll just casually clean while I'm watching The Office.
Yeah.
So, I mean, always be curious about what makes it easier for yourself because we're all so different.
So I'm psycho. And so my thing is 48 Hours, Dateline, Nightline, any of those mass murder shows.
Yeah.
I'm there, but I would never watch those at night. Oh my gosh, I couldn't handle it. But during the
No.
day, I think it's the intensity, and I just like I love to clean with those. Psycho.
It's mysteries too. Your brain's like, I have to solve this thing.
So you're actually working, right? On
Yeah.
your brain is working while your body's working. Like music
Yeah.
doesn't do it for me. Podcasts sometimes. I've never tried those mystery podcasts. I think I probably need to try them. But anyway.
Yeah. There are some good ones.
So Sarah, what do you think the key to living successfully with ADHD is?
I think that it is learning how to look at yourself differently than you have looked at yourself for many years, probably. I think that I definitely agree with you. I think that people with ADHD, I've seen the most brilliance and just curiosity, very unconventional solutions to things, or, a sense of humor. There's just something that we bring that is different because we have had to overcompensate in a lot of different ways. So I think, you can't always be focusing on the things that you're struggling with or that are challenging for you. You have to really kind of learn how to be your own cheerleader and advocate for yourself, and then look at those things that do challenge you as a strategic issue, not a failing that you somehow should power through. It's just a strategic problem with a logical answer that is going to work for you if you'll allow yourself to come to those conclusions by yourself and not, think that you have to do it the way you've always been taught or the way you see other people do it.
I love that answer. Sarah, you're such a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That's what I have for you for today's episode for this week. If you like this episode with Sarah, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week.